Welcome back, guys! Or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's the recently redesigned 2026 Chevy Equinox. But more specifically, this is the RS, or the Rally Sport trim level of the Equinox, in the color that Chevy likes to call Lakeshore Blue Metallic, which on a sunny day like today looks absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of metallic flake in the paint, but while this is one of the best looking and newest compact crossovers on the market today, it's not perfect. So today I get to share the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Chevy Equinox to help you guys at home decide if it might be the right vehicle for you, or if you should leave it at the lot and look at the other compact crossover competition. So today you can expect to see a walk around, all the specs, initial driving impressions, 0 to 60 on GPS, and then my final thoughts. And huge thanks to the Twin Falls Chevy for letting me borrow this one for the day. I'll link them below if you're interested because they sell below MSRP, they ship all over the country, and with that said, let's dive right into this review. And thank you for watching car videos on YouTube, but if you get anything out of this video today, you like my style, or you like the Chevy Equinox, please consider liking my video. Basically, that lets me know to make more stuff like this. It helps the video get shared, and it'll help you as well by having the YouTube choose to show you more stuff like this. Thank you so much. But if you're new to Chevy, or the Chevy Equinox, there's a few things that you should probably know. Chevy is an American automaker. They were founded back in Detroit, Michigan in the year 1911, and for well over 100 years, they've stayed all American. They haven't sold out to any other countries or companies, and that's pretty cool because we don't have very many American automakers anymore. But the Equinox started in 2005. This is actually part of the 4th generation of Equinox that started last year for 2025, which is kind of silly to say because it's currently May of 2025, and I'm filming an actual 2026 model year example. So Chevy's pretty excited to push these out down the assembly line, which unfortunately, even though Chevy is an all-American company, a lot of their unibody SUVs and crossovers are actually outsourced to Mexico and China. This specific example was assembled in Mexico before coming up the border to the United States, and a base model, which is the LT, starts at about $30,000. And for $30,000, you actually do get quite a few features on your Equinox, but it's going to be a front-wheel drive variation. If you want all-wheel drive, that's another $2,000. And if you want the RS, which is priced the same as the Active, which are the two upper trim levels, it's going to be about a $34,000 vehicle. But after destination delivery, all-wheel drive, the extra options and goodies that this one has, this is about a $39,000 Chevy Equinox. So what do you get for that $39,000 price tag? You get these really cool Rally Sport red badges on the front and rear fascia of the vehicle, blacked out Chevy bow tie, Equinox on the door panel, black side mirror caps and roof rails, and a few other blacked out features like that. You also have a reasonable amount of black plastic cladding. It's not overly excessive. And then you have these really nice contrasting silver and black 19-inch wheels that actually do look pretty good. On the interior, you have a heated leather-wrapped 8-speed automatic paddle shifter steering wheel. You have heated and ventilated front seats, a huge panoramic sunroof that the front half can tilt and slide, which is pretty neat, and nice seat materials in general. You also have a lot of safety features between all of the sensors in the bumper, the blind spot monitoring, the adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist. But this window sticker does not show the crash test rating. What I could find online is that these are anticipated to be a 5-star crash test rated vehicle like the 2025s, but they are not a top safety pick. They are not the safest compact crossover in the class compared to things like the Toyota Rav4 and the Subaru Forester, but they should hold up fairly well with all those features to help protect you and your family. But right now is probably going to be the best time to go off script to interrupt this video and to share a few honest thoughts about the Equinox before we continue with this review, because this is a very honest review after all. I've driven probably at least a half dozen of the Equinoxes. I own 2 other compact crossovers of the current generation, and I've driven the main competitors to this many, many times. So I've experienced a lot that this vehicle has to offer and a lot that the other ones have to offer. And I do have to point out that even though this is just about class leading and how many features it has, having ventilated seats, having the turbo engine, having all these safety features, having all the other creature comforts that it has, I have to say that these features don't necessarily work the best in the class. Just because they are objectively there on paper does not mean that they work as well as other vehicles or that they work the best. I don't want to say they're the worst working ones, but I do have to say features like the ventilated seats, it took over a half an hour of driving the vehicle with the ventilated seats on before my butt started to finally feel a little bit cold. Additionally, when I got into this vehicle, lane keep assist was turned off. Once I turned it on, I could hardly notice a difference. The vehicle basically lets you sway out of your lane before it starts to kick in, and it really doesn't do a very good job. It's nowhere near as competent as even my RAV4, which is nowhere near as competent as the Subaru Forester and the current generation eyesight that those cars have. So although this does have a lot of really cool features, I just have to advise you guys to test drive one of these, but also test drive the competition, because the features might not work as well as you anticipate they do, especially if you order one of these and you haven't already test driven it. You have to try it out for yourself, and you have to compare it to the competition. And back to the review. But because this is a compact crossover, it's overall actually pretty fun to drive, easy to park, and easy to cruise around town, while being heavy enough and large enough to be stable at highway and interstate speeds. Overall, this one is about 15.25 feet long, which is pretty average for the class. It has just about a 9-foot wheelbase, which is also pretty average. And then it's roughly 6 feet wide, 5.5 feet tall, and depending on the powertrain, the features, all the things that can change with the platform, the different models, and the trim levels, and the goodies, it weighs around 3,400 to 3,600 pounds. This one, I would speculate, is pretty well loaded, so it's going to be at the higher end of the spectrum. These can tow about 1,500 pounds the way they're configured. This specific RS has a payload capacity of 1,075, which is about 125 pounds less than the LT trim level I reviewed about a week ago. And it does have about 8 inches of ground clearance. Because this is all-wheel drive, it has a 347 final axle ratio, and it can do a full circle in about 37 feet. And then the last couple things to mention out here is the gas door is located on the driver's side, which is where I prefer it to be, and not all the compact crossovers have it there. But when you lock the vehicle, the gas door does not lock, so the bums might attempt to siphon some of your 14.9 gallons of fuel. That is about an average size fuel tank for a compact crossover, but what is less than average is the MPG rating. These are unfortunately only rated for 25 in the city, 29 on the highway, so your max road trip and range is going to be limited to about 430 miles. But because this is the RS, it has the fancy 19-inch wheel, and it's wrapped in a Continental 235, 55, 19 tire that does have about 9/32 of tread, which is pretty average for an OEM tire. And then this is your key with a lot of cool features. Not only does it have lock and unlock, but it has remote start, power liftgate, and panic button. But you can just leave it in your pocket because you do have this little nub of a button right here, which is a very fast-acting proximity key feature, and I like it a lot. The driver's side door panel opens up really easily. It is large, the window is adequately sized, but it's all black materials. They're not necessarily the nicest materials, especially for almost $40,000. The armrest material goes up with the door card. You have some black, cheaper plastics right there. You do have memory seats. That's pretty cool. All the basic controls right there. You have this button for the power liftgate, an unnamed speaker, and unfortunately, all of these Equinoxes have base model speakers. This doesn't have an upgraded system, and that's pretty unfortunate. Nothing really on the door sill. This is a little bit lower of a seat than some of the other compact crossovers, so at 5'11", I would have to drop down a little bit, but it's high enough up, high enough off the ground, that for most people it's going to be easy to get out of here, especially compared to a sedan. Down here you have all-weather mats, rubberized dead pedal, regular pedals. You have no knee airbag, which is really unfortunate. You have the hood release, a few buttons right here. You have this Camaro style gauge, which is red for the RS, which is really cool. You have the windshield wiper stock, you have the paddle shifters, you have the leather wrapped heated steering wheel. You have some extra storage down here in the center console, and then you have these really cool power heated ventilated seats that have kind of a hybridized synthetic and cloth material, RS in the headrest, and then the panoramic sunroof up top. Sitting inside the Equinox is actually really comfortable, and it seems to be insulated fairly well, especially on a windy day like today where the trees are dancing around. So overall, the beltline of the vehicle is maybe a tiny bit higher than some of the other compact crossovers. Visibility is about on average with most of them, and it just is a nice layout. You especially have a lot of extra storage room on this compared to most of the other ones. When you fire it up, the mirror, basically turns into two different digital displays, which is pretty cool. Currently have actually it's pretty interesting how it's set up right now. It keeps turning on the ventilated seats and all the HVAC and all that stuff. But at least you have physical climate controls. The horn, it's pretty loud. It's not too high pitch, so that's pretty cool. You have paddle shifters again on the back, adaptive cruise on the left, but there's a blank button right there. They seriously should have put the, put the lane keep assist feature on right there instead of having to go through the display for that, which is pretty weird. Let's see, how long is it going to take me to find it? Where are we going? At least you guys get a really good view of all of this stuff right here. See more controls. Park. Yeah, that is where the lane keep assist was. So thankfully it's turned on, and personally, I don't like looking at the wall of mirror. There's way too much reflection, especially how these are angled. You can basically see my whole reflection, which if I wanted to look at myself, I wouldn't film anonymously. Anyways, you do have a basic heads-up display right there. Overall, this is a nice place to be. I like the physical controls. You have a nice big storage pocket right here. You have a couple plugins. You have a wireless charger, which in my experience does not seem to work very well. It at least did not charge my phone after about 10 or 15 minutes through the silicone case. Then you have your drive modes, which this has 3 different drive modes. No sport mode or anything like that. You have cup holders, more storage right here, and a decent sized center console with a lifty tray, which is pretty fun. Up top, you do have a manually sliding, tilting, and sliding power moonroof. The second slide I meant is the shade back there. And then you have a sunglass holder. What kind of lighting? Ooh, maybe that's LED, but it almost looks like incandescent. Anyways, we're going to turn it off and hop in the back. And I do have to say, for being a compact crossover, this blacked out RS trim level of the Equinox in Lakeshore Blue Metallic, which really seems to change how the color looks depending on the sunlight it's in or the shade, it is seriously one of the best looking compact crossovers in my subjective opinion. But when we open up the door panel actually opens up pretty wide, bigger than my Toyota Rav4, which is a huge knock on that platform, but maybe not as big as the Mazda or the Subaru. You don't have the extra structural support like the Subarus for why those are such a safe car for the backseat occupants. The Maroni sticker takes up the majority of the window, but it's still about average for the class. You still have the exact same materials for the back, same textured theme from the door panel armrest even. And then when the seats are down, that's what they look like. They are inclined a little bit, but you still have quite a bit of room. And this one, more than the Mazdas, which is a nice thing. When you hop inside, which the seats are not too low compared to my overall height and stature, I have a map pocket. I have heated seats on this RS. I have some vents. I can pretty easily lift up the 60 split. And then I have LED lights. I have natural light above my head. I can look at the trees all day long. And honestly, from back here, it's a pretty nice place to be. But I don't think these seats recline, and that is unfortunate. The back of the RS, I actually think looks really good too, just like the side profile. But if it's going to have a red RS badge, why does this have a 190 horsepower tiny turbo engine? More on that later, but honestly, it really should have a 300 horsepower plus V6 or something like that. Anyways, there's a few different ways to open the back hatch area or to get into your cargo area. You can either push the button that's on the door panel, climb through the back seats, push the button underneath the Chevy emblem, or just use the power liftgate. But I've learned from my other Equinox video, these are incredibly sensitive. I don't like this setup. You have to push it twice, hold it for a millisecond, and then let off. If you do anything other than that, it's going to error out. Let's see if I can do it. Oh no, I don't know. Oh, somehow it worked. I totally messed that up, but doing it wrongly made it work correctly, unlike in my last video. Anyways, back here you have about 30 cubic feet of room. That is average for the class. The leaders, like the RAV4, have 37, so you're going to miss out a little bit. But like most of the other ones, the bumper is not overly thick. It's a little bit higher on this platform, though, but not enough that it's going to be that much of a drastic change for how difficult it is to lift your groceries and your stuff into the back of this. When you fold down the seats, you do have about 64 cubic feet, which again is about average. It's better than a couple of the other compact crossovers, but it's also worse by 5 to 10 feet than the class leaders. You have the regular non-all-weather mats right there. And then down here you have some storage, and then you have a spare tire that's just a steely one. But other than the LED light, there's not really a whole lot to talk about back here. And then on the power liftgate, the only button that you have is for the power liftgate. The driver's side door panel is what is next, and you'll notice you still have the proximity key feature button right there. You still have blacked out Equinox badging, black side mirrors. The whole profile looks the exact same as the driver's side. But you are missing a few of the controls. Of course, no memory seats, and it actually has power seats, which a lot of the competition does not. You also have access to the storage right there. My backpack is enjoying the heated ventilated seats, but just remember, like I mentioned before, some of those really fancy features don't necessarily work as well as they would on another platform, so try it out for yourself. Otherwise, you have the really cool, nicest trim pieces on this vehicle are right here on the inside around the vents. And then it's a non-locking glove box. It's adequately sized, maybe a little bit smaller than a lot of the competition. But that said, let me come around to the front. I'm going to pop the hood and I'll show you what the 1.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder engine looks like under the hood of this very aggressive looking Chevy Equinox. Under the hood is a 175 horsepower at 5,600 RPM little 1.5 liter turbo engine. It does make about 203 pound-feet of torque at 2,000 RPM, so it does feel punchy once the turbo has kicked in. But below that 2,000 RPM, this thing feels almost gutless, almost dead, because all you have is 1.5 liters of naturally aspirated displacement. And other than the Honda CR-V, the non-hybrid, there really aren't very many compact crossovers with this small of an engine. The Mazda CX-5, the Toyota Rav4, and the Subaru Forester all have a naturally aspirated 2.5 liter in their non-hybrid. And I highly recommend, highly prefer those engines over this because they feel like they're going to be more reliable than a high-strung, probably pushing 16 PSI of turbo boost from a very small little engine. But that's neither here nor there. You guys can read the forums, check it out for yourself, how reliable these engines have held up. But when we get a closer look, you'll notice the air filter in the box. It goes down through the turbo right there. I love that you can see the spoolie boy right in front. Honestly, I don't know if these have any aftermarket platform, but that would be so easy to swap out for a larger one. And then the piping comes back around and into the intake manifold side on the back. You do have this little plastic valve cover, it looks like, over the actual valve cover. I'm assuming that's what that is. And then you have your 0W20, your dipstick, your battery, your reservoirs on the periphery. It looks like a fuse box right here. And the transmission, which these all-wheel drive ones have an 8-speed automatic. But if you just go with the front-wheel drive, you'll have a CVT, which I know is not everyone's favorite. But then you have an engine bracket right here. You have the serpentine belt hidden down there on the side. Honestly, there's probably enough room to work on this that it wouldn't be that incredibly difficult. Everything looks very mechanical and pretty straightforward, and that is a very good thing. With that said, let me drop the hood, and we will take this thing on the road. Initial driving impressions of the 2026 Chevy Equinox RS. Let's get up to speed. In the first 2 gears, this actually gets up to speed pretty decently. In third gear, you can feel the horsepower deficit, especially before the boost kicks in the higher RPM. But once you're up to speed, this is actually a pretty comfortable vehicle to cruise around in. Unloaded, not using up almost the 1100 payload capacity. It feels really good unloaded. I don't know how it would be towing, but these aren't really rated to tow that much. Visibility is actually pretty good because the hood slopes down. The windows are overall relatively large, and the side mirrors, they're big enough. The rear view mirror goes right down the center. This vehicle is missing an upgraded sound system, though. I don't think that the speakers sound fantastic. They just sound like every other base model's vehicle speakers. But for 40 grand, you would expect a little bit nicer setup than that. Otherwise, all the touch materials, the interior, the accents, it really feels nice. I love how much storage this has, and it seems to do a really good job of fitting most people's needs from what I would assume. But something I don't like, similar to most vehicles, is the wireless charger doesn't seem to work very well, especially if your phone has a case. After having my phone on it for about 10 minutes, it did not increase the battery charge at all. And there's a lot of glare from the infotainment screen and the digital display, so I could do without that. But overall, they are nice to look at when they're not glaring at you and you don't just see the reflection of your shirt and of your chin in the reflection. Overall, though, this is a pretty nice vehicle. I love the panoramic sunroof. I love all the accents throughout. You really do feel like you're driving something special until you try to turn on the radio or you use some of the other features. Some of the adaptive cruise control lane keep assist settings don't seem to work nearly as well as other competitors, especially the Subarus. And then I've also had the ventilated seat on for probably over 20 minutes at this point, and I don't know that it feels much cooler than these seats would regularly feel, especially a cloth seat in today's 71-degree rated temperature. So not all features are as competent as other vehicles with their similar features. This does seem to offer a lot, but I do wish some of the features worked a little bit better. Otherwise, it handles the road nicely, even on these 19-inch wheels. And it is a fun vehicle to drive overall. I highly recommend you guys find one for yourself to test drive, but also check out the competition. Otherwise, I'm gonna head to the private road so we can do a 0 to 60. 0 to 60 in the 2026 Chevy Equinox. I am in all-wheel drive mode. We're gonna do a little bit of brake rev, and traction control is turned off and we are in normal mode because that's the sportiest mode that this RS has. So let's see what it can do at 5,400 feet of elevation. Third gear really slowed down, especially before we got into the boost. But true 0 to 60 came in at 10.03 seconds. So I'm sure this would easily be a second faster if we were at sea level on a much cooler day. But 10 seconds is what we get today with me only in the car unloaded. My final thoughts of the 2026 Chevy Equinox, specifically the Lakeshore Blue RS. Honestly, I do think that this is one of the best looking compact crossovers, and I know a lot of people buy vehicles based off of their looks and how they make them feel, but having the RS badge, which unfortunately, like it always has been, it's just an appearance package. It's not an upgraded powertrain. It's not really that much different than any of the other ones other than having some really cool trim pieces. But this new generation looks awesome. I'm not surprised why these sell a couple 100,000 units every single year. There's a Chevy dealership in any reasonably sized town, so it's pretty easy to get your hands on one of these. But I am a little bit disappointed by the fact that the safety features, the creature comforts, the interior tech, it's not exactly designed as well as some of the other vehicles. Some of those features took so long to actually start kicking in or to work or to even seem like they're doing anything that you almost might as well not have them and just save the cost on the lower trim level like the LT for $5,000 less. I was just a little bit disappointed that the ventilated seats really didn't cool me down. Honestly, I got cold by the HVAC after about 20 minutes on the 75-degree day, which that kind of took a little bit too long, or longer than it should have. But it took over a half an hour for me to finally feel like my bum was getting a little bit cold. And again, it's only 75 degrees outside. But overall, having the panoramic sunroof, having all the blacked out badging, having the aggressive front fascia, and just the nice driver position, the overall decent visibility and comfort for all the 5 passenger seats that this vehicle has, and also having well over 100-pound more payload capacity than most other compact crossovers, the Equinox still offers a lot. I do like this trim level a lot. This is probably the one I would get, but I don't like the price and I don't like the fact that those features are a little bit disappointing. But ultimately, guys, these are just my experiences with this example. What are your experiences? I'd love if you'd comment below. Are you one of the 200,000 people buying one this year? Have you already owned one? Are you considering it, or what else are you looking at? Does this video and this vehicle make you happy, sad, or indifferent? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts, feelings, and we'll connect down in the comments below. If you got anything out of this video, please consider liking it. Comment those thoughts, subscribe if you haven't already, and check out the Twin Falls Chevy, one of the best dealerships in the country. I highly recommend them. They're a great group of people. And with that said, see you guys.